Help is hopefully on the way for veterans across the country. Monday, VA Secretary Robert McDonald announced plans to overhaul the Veteran Affairs system. McDonald called it the biggest reorganization in the department's history. The aim? To improve care for veterans and the system, which has been riddled with problems, sometimes forcing vets to face deadly consequences. Earlier this year, it was learned that the veterans were waiting months for treatment at dozens of VA facilities across the country, and to make matters worse, some of those facilities manipulated records to hide the fact that there were lapses in treatment that cost some veterans their lives. The VA says that the new plan to overhaul the system includes establishing customer service organization. A chief of customer service officer will report directly to the secretary and work to ensure that the VA's culture and practices meet the needs and expectations of veterans. A regional framework will also be developed, and the goal to try and simplify and coordinate operations. The VA will also create a community veteran advisory council and to work to improve efficiency as well as production.
This is very personal. I have a lot of folks that I served with that I am really want to take care of in the very best way I can.
The VA hopes to have these new measures in place within a year, and I spoke with military consultant Mike Lyons about the venture. And let's bring Mike Lyons in now. And Mike, before we even get into some changes, and they're pretty seismic, what's happening at the VA, we'll talk about that in a second, and some of the numbers to measure where veterans are today. As a day, what does it mean to you? Because, everybody has an idea what Memorial Day means, but Veterans Day carries a different meaning. I think sometimes they get conflated.
Yeah, they sure do, Richard. It's funny you mention that because ever since I've left the service, I've always taken this day and I've watched it evolve now to be really a celebration of veterans. And I think that's good that it's happened this way. Maybe 20 years ago, it wasn't the same, and you'd get a passing, thank you for your service. But I think this is a good day that every veteran should be thankful that they live in this country, had the opportunity to serve, and again, we'll pass that same gratefulness on to other people.
Obviously, a major reorganization of the VA, and you get the sense that it's not just rearranging the deck chairs, somebody else looking to point the finger either at predecessors. I think it means something that this is a guy who went through West Point, that this guy himself, put 5 years in, and he had other options, but this is someone who saw a structure that needed to be fixed, and he doesn't seem, after 90 days here, to really be dancing around the edges. He's dealing with this in the main. Yeah,
first and foremost, the right guy. I mean, from his experience, age-wise, what he's been through. A West Point grad, Bob McDonald, has been both a soldier and a corporate executive, multi-billion-dollar leader within organizations, and look what he's done in the past 90 days. He did what a leader does. They come into the organization and they take inventory, and he went around, he talked to a bunch of different people, and he got a lot of different views from everybody, veteran support groups, people on the ground. He made some immediate changes. He saw things happening right away. That's what leaders do. They lead by walking around and firing people right away if they think there's something bad. And now he's ready to launch what's really a corporate reorganization and restructuring of the VA on Veterans Day. I tell you, you couldn't have scripted any better, and it just goes to show me that he's the right guy.
To that end, I always find it interesting. We've gone to a lot of VA hospitals over the years, even before the latest firestorm happened, and you're not met with complete desperation when you open the doors and you talk to the people that go there. To them, they'll swear by the care that they get. Conversely, you look at the waiting times, completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
How do we navigate? Is the problem here his biggest issue, not just short staff in terms of docs and psychiatrists, et cetera, but that just so much bureaucracy? Mm-hmm. Is that going to be the biggest challenge he has to get through that red tape?
Yeah, as a CEO, you focus on your own people, you focus on the processes, or you focus on your customers. And he's going to look at this as focusing on his customers as these veterans, but then also he's going to look at process. And if the VA was formed many years ago, but these major hubs that were built were back World War II, Vietnam era, and frankly, the veterans that we have today aren't in those places anymore. So we might have a great facility in St. Louis, Missouri, but we just don't have the same density of veteran that exists exist there that once was. So he's got to break down geographical silos, so to speak. He's going to use technology, implement front-end technology now, one place, like a enter once, use many with regard to entering the system. And then he's going to have to figure out regionally how to capitalize on the assets that he has out there. And I think, that's the biggest thing. The demographics have changed, and you've got both an aging population, World War II, Vietnam, that needs a certain kind of care, and then this new veteran that's coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, PTSD, a different set of needs. They're all in different locations, so he's going to bring all of those together in a different way and reorganize it top to bottom.
You look at the numbers, especially for the guys coming back from, as you said, Iraq and Afghanistan, from the joblessness numbers and some of the other metrics we use. And we're not dealing with the Vietnam generation where we treat our veterans terribly in many cases. You get the idea the public wants to do the right thing, and you hear lip service from a lot of the electeds. But it sometimes seems too big. If they wanted to make constructive changes to materially impact guys, and men and women who did more than the vast majority of us for this country, what would be the right place to start?
They've got to start actually in the out-processing portion of the military. Most veterans will tell you that there's no bridge between the Department of Defense and Department of Veteran Affairs. That's the first thing that has to get fixed. Every veteran has got to be enrolled in the system, tracked and monitored. I got an email today from the White House that they knew I was a veteran thanking for my service. So I thought that was a good sign. But every veteran should have gotten that email. I get an email because I was exposed to a potentially dangerous situation during the first Gulf War. So they tracked my unit because of that. But we've got to register veterans. I think that's the first thing, if anything, and I think that's what Bob McDonald is doing, is making sure that everyone's in the system, everyone's included. Then when you have that there, then the demographics, then you know what the problem is solved. You've sized the problem, you've sized the population, and then you attack it from that way. And he's going to use technology regional centers to go after to make sure that he's got the whole population.
Beyond the VA, though, Mike, sometimes I think the stoicism of the veteran is something we all admire, right? But is it almost to their detriment where they tolerate things that they necessarily shouldn't in terms of some of, not just the bureaucracy, I'm not even just talking the VA, but there are services that should be made available for these guys, job retraining here, and it goes up and down the line. And whether they exist or not, they've done a crummy job of communicating what's there for the guys, or we don't do a good enough job for these guys when they get home. What's the best way we need to change that?
Again, go back to the active service, because when you think about it, what organization prepares you to leave that job to do something else?
Right.
I mean, and so in some cases it's thank you very much and goodbye, good luck when you get there, and you've got to really prepare for that move when you're on active duty. So I think a lot of that can happen on active duty. The problem is, when I was on active duty, for example, I hated to lose a good soldier from the military. I'd say that was a valuable asset, but that happened. So I think that's got to be part of it there. But then the community's got to create different opportunities for these veterans. They don't necessarily have the exact skill set that fits in a job description. They've got to go to mentoring programs. That's how World War II veterans returned from home. They became electricians, plumbers, built businesses because they were taken under their wing by individuals, men and women, that made sure that they were set up for success. They were going to make mistakes. But that veteran will bring to the table tremendous leadership and a tremendous can-do attitude. They'll endure any hardship, and they'll have the same loyalty to your company as they have to the country.
Finally, maybe a stupid question, but I've heard it asked many times when they'll see a soldier in uniform on a commercial jet or whatever else. People say, I want to say thank you for the service, but I don't know if that's intrusive or not. The veterans like to hear it?
Yeah, from my perspective, that goes around the veteran community. From my perspective, when someone thanks me, I'm very grateful that I say you're welcome back. It's, I chose to serve. I think that all veterans should not make an issue out of that and not get into the politics of that. If someone is nice enough to say that to you. The last point I'd say to that is this, Rich. Our country learned on the backs of the Vietnam veterans. Those are the ones I think on a continual basis. We learned on the backs of the Vietnam veterans to love our soldiers and sailors and Marines. We didn't always do that. We hate the wars, we hate the conflict, but because of the Vietnam veteran, we love our soldiers. And I personally, anytime I see a Vietnam veteran, I always thank them for their service.
Perfect note to end on. Mike, thank you so much.
Thanks, Rich.
And coming up next, how one group made it possible for World War II veterans to visit a memorial created just for them. We'll have that story when we return.